Hey VC, back with a new finds video. All these records I picked up in this pile today and in my next video, because I'm going to split this into two videos I think, all came from a trade that I made with some records that I bought about 6 or 7 months ago now in an auction that I went to. I bought a couple of job lots that included things that I wanted in there, but there was also an awful lot of stuff that I didn't really want to keep. So it's taken me a few months to sort it out, clean it up and get it ready to trade. Took it down to the shop, got a really good deal. I was really happy with what they gave me using a complicated algorithm that I use to work these things out. Not really. So really pleased with the stack that I got that I'm going to start showing you in a second. Before I show you those, a couple of things I wanted to say. I've had a couple of shout outs from people in the VC recently, and it's really sort of heartwarming for someone like me who's relatively new to making the videos. I try and give shout outs by way of talking about the records that I show if someone else has shown them, or has shown something that's inspired me to buy it or something like that. But there's a couple of people who I should really have mentioned by now, who've been inspiring a lot of the music that I listen to. I listen to a lot of records on an evening, and sometimes during the day if I get a chance. On a night I tend to listen to things online that people have recommended, usually via Spotify or YouTube, whichever I can find them on. And a couple of those people who I haven't mentioned are Vinyl in the Van. Great channel, shows great records, really cool guy. You need to watch Jay if you're not already watching him. Deadwax66, Randy, again shows great records that I really like. A real inspiration to the stuff that I like to listen to, and a really good presenter of the stuff he shows. Tells some really good stories behind them as well. And High Octane Revival, again great channel, shows a lot of garage from various countries and a lot of stuff I don't know that I like to check out as well. I want to mention people as I go along throughout my videos who subscribe to me, and even people who haven't as well, because I don't like to leave people out. That's the other thing with shout outs. You know, there's lots of great people making videos that I watch, and I don't give them shout outs, and I should. So I'll make a few shout outs in every video just to sort of get by that. Okay, so let's make a start instead of waffling. First album, The Paper Garden. You can probably tell from looking at the sleeve we're into psychedelia here. This is an album that came out in 1969 originally. This is a 1986 repress. This is on Antar Records. Very different sleeve on the original one. This has got a nice country house you can see there in the background maybe. Nice psychedelic design on here. And you can sort of see the name of the band if you look very carefully. Paper Garden sort of goes across there. You probably can't pick it up on the camera. But I mean, with songs like Gypsy Wine, Sunshine People, Way Up High, you know what sort of thing you're going to get. It's something that's quite hard-edged psychedelia, played really well, lots of nice instrumentation on here. The band were from New York, very talented, 3 vocalists, multi-instrumentalists. Originally started off playing the northeast of United States of America, sort of playing the campuses around there. And when it came to making their first album, they wrote a whole new set of songs to make the first album, totally discarded all the stuff they'd been touring. So you've got to hold them in high esteem for that, really. Quite Beatlesy in places, early Zombies you can sort of hear in this. Again, it's probably one of those albums that the psych experts will know, but it was new to me. It was the only album they made, sadly. Again, one of those albums that got good reviews but didn't sell. And in 2002 it was put out on CD, and that sort of brought it back to life, if you like. And then in 2014 Sunday's Record picked it up and they put it out, and I think in 2012 Relics had put it out as well. So yeah, Paper Gods, I knew I'd call it that, Paper Garden. Highly recommended psych album, definitely worth picking up. And it's nice to get it in really nice condition as well. Yeah. Okay, next an album, or a group that you'll be familiar with, maybe not so much the album. This one, not so great condition, but I got it for a good price. This is Love. This is their 5th album, called Out Here. And this is a double album, came out in 1969. And when Love came to the end of their contract with Elektra, Arthur Lee broke the group, before they came to the end of the contract with Elektra, Arthur Lee broke the group up. And he had another album to make for Elektra under contract, which ended up being For Sale. But he wrote enough material for 3 albums. So there was For Sale, and then this one that came out as a double album. And it's more sort of psych rock and blues. It's a little bit heavier than some of their other stuff, I would say. It's, yeah, a little bit less commercial than the early albums, like the debut Love. And always going to be hard, obviously, to follow up Forever Changes, and they probably never did that. I mean, you can't follow up a landmark album. People's expectations are really high. I mean, there's a new version of Sign DC on here that was on their original album. But I was never a massive fan of Da Capo. And I you know, what I've heard of this album, and I've heard most of it, I really, really like. And this is a US pressing on Blue Thumb. Like I said at the start, I only paid £10 for this. Normally, if you've got a UK pressing, you're looking at the £40 area. US pressing in the UK, you're looking at 30. So for £10, I'm quite happy with. You know, it's got a bit of ringwear on the sleeve, not a big problem. Plays fine, even on the bits that are a little bit marked on the album. Nice gatefold. As you can, like I said, you can't really see it too great maybe on here, but try and show you the gatefold. It's not, like I said, not in the greatest of condition. Nice picture of the band on the inner. So that's Love, and their fifth album from 1969, called Out Here. Okay, next a bit of blues. I like a bit of blues. Often show it in my videos, as you may have seen in my early ones. And this is the Running Sunflower Blues Band. Bullen Street Blues is the name of this one. And this group features Bob Brunning, who was the original bass player in Fleetwood Mac. Also played a little while in Savoy Brown as well. And he was in Fleetwood Mac before John McVie left John Mayall and Blues Breakers. Also in the group, let me get the names right on the back here. Bob Hall. He founded the Groundhogs. He also did a lot of work with Alexis Corner as well, so someone who I also held in very high regard in terms of British blues. This is their debut album from 1968. They went on to make 4 albums. Haven't heard the others. I've only heard the first side of this one. Really, really good. It was kind of a blind buy. I mean, you can tell from the title and, you know, the look of the band, you know where they're going, and had a quick look on Discogs while I was in the shop to see what it said about them. But just great 60s blues. You know, I highly recommend what I've heard of it. Title track, Bullen Street Blues, grabbed me the first time. That's a song written about a street in Battersea. It mentions on the sleeve notes on the back. The rest of the band, or members of the band, they supported US blues artists when they came here as well. So, you know, musicians of quite a high calibre, I would imagine. And Bob Brunning was also mainly a teacher who also lectured about blues music as well until he passed away sadly in 2011. So yeah, really good album. That's the Bullen Street Blues Band, Bullen Street Blues. Next up, a band and an album that you will be very familiar with, I'm sure. Small Faces' debut from 1966, self-titled album on Decca. This is an original pressing. Nice burgundy Decca label we have here. It's original in there. A bit tatty there, but who cares? Really nice to pick this one up again for a really good price. This was just under £25 I paid for this one. Again, difficult to pick one up in decent condition for much less than, I don't know, £40 to £50 for a first pressing probably. It's a mono. Starts off with Shake, a Sam Cooke song. Most of the stuff on the album's written by the group. I'm sure many of you know the album well enough when I'm teaching me grammar at suck eggs here, but just thought I'd say it anyway. For the people who don't know. A little bit late for the sort of the British invasion of the USA, but still in that same kind of R&B genre. Obviously mod, and obviously nattily dressed as they were. Small Faces are famous for sort of dressing well and buying the stuff in Carnaby Street. And you know, every time I go in Carnaby Street in London, and I get to go there relatively often, I always think about, you know, the history of it, and it's that kind of place that evokes that kind of way of thinking, I think. So I mentioned that the songs are mainly written by the group, which was mainly different to a lot of the R&B sort of stuff that was made by British bands at the time. A lot of blues standards in there. But some of the stuff on here is also, you know, co-written by the producers, of which there were 3 on this album. One of which was Kenny Lynch, who's sort of more known to people like me and people of my age who were sort of born in the late 60s as someone who's more of an entertainer, stroke comedian. but he was also a writer and producer of some note as well. Also, production credits on here go to Don Arden, who's very well known in the music industry for his no-nonsense tactics, if you like, and Ian Samwell, who wrote Move It for Cliff Richard, and he was also a producer, produced Joni Mitchell and Grateful Dead. So yeah, Small Faces debut there, and the big hits off here, What You Gonna Do About It, Inshallah, and an album that was also obviously very successful in the UK as well. Got in the top 5 and was up there for weeks. Back to the United States now for Every Mother's Son, and this is a 1967 pressing on MGM. Clean cut bunch of pop stars from the late 60s from the USA, from New York. A bit of a family thing going on with this band. They started off as a folk band originally, picked up by Peter Leeds, who passed them on to Will Farrell, who wrote Sloopy, Hang On Sloopy and Boys, which was the Shirelles B-side, and also a song that ended up on the Beatles' Please Please Me album. So a bit of background about how they got discovered there. Come and Take a Ride in My Boat was a massive hit in the United States, apparently. Not a band who are known here, but that was the only hit they had, and they kind of sunk without a trace after that. They were massive for a short period of time. They made 2 albums, of which this one was the first. They didn't do particularly well. The first album sold a bit, but the second album didn't really do it, and that was the end of them, really. So Every Mother's Son, self-titled debut. Okay, next, In Search of the Lost Chord by the Moody Blues. Again, a pretty well-known album, late 60s, 68 I think for this one. Yeah, on Duram. It's the original UK pressing. Great to pick this one up, and not an expensive album in the UK generally, but this is in immaculate condition considering it's from 1968. Really nice, shiny sleeve. You didn't have to do much cleaning up of this one. Again, nice gatefold, black and white. But great pictures on the back there of the band. And when I've seen a lot of Moody Blues on the TV lately, on BBC4 here in the UK, they show a lot of retro programmes on a Friday night, and Moody Blues often turn up in the psych programmes and all sorts of programmes, because they kind of went across that psych rock and prog rock range, didn't they, really, in the late 60s. But when I look at them, I always think of moustaches. Some great moustaches on the back of this sleeve. And I know Vinyl Richie made a video ages ago, when I was well before I started making videos, about 18 months ago maybe, about moustaches in music, and you've got to check it out, hilarious. But yeah, and obviously more importantly is the music, and it's a really, really good album. And I don't think many people hold it up as being the best album, but it's one that I really like, and it's nice to pick it up on vinyl, like I said, in such great condition. And it's kind of a concept album about quest and discovery and that kind of thing, and there's all sorts of psychedelic elements and an homage to an LSD guru as well. Justin Hayward's sort of inspired by George Harrison on this album to play the sitar. So very psych, great sleeve, great album. That's the Moody Blues, In Search of the Lost Chord. 10 years after, another band who receive a lot of love in the vinyl community. I think I've seen Flipside CT show an album by them recently. This is on Duram too, like Small Faces was. And this is their 5th album from 1970 called What? Great blues rock. Not held up as one of their better albums, because it came out the same year as Cricklewood Green, which was their 4th album. I think it was very shortly after, maybe within 4 or 5 months after that album came out. So it's always going to be difficult, isn't it, to make two albums so close together that have got that thing about them. And they're a band that originally formed in Mansfield and Nottingham area in the UK in the 60s. A few name changes along the way. Alvin Lee was the main guy, and he was a great guitarist. He could go from like a rhythmic, chunky guitar to straight into a superb lead. He wrote all the songs on the album. Again, it's a nice sleeve and a nice gatefold. Yeah, like I said, he wrote all the songs on the album. He was the guitarist and vocalist, apart from Sweet Little 16, which is Chuck Berry's song, which was recorded from the Isle of Wight festival from 1970. And they sort of came to know because they were included in the Woodstock film the previous year. Had one hit in the UK. I'd Love to Change the World, I think. But that's, yeah, 10 years after What. Chocolate Watch Band. They're a group who's hard to get their stuff in the UK sometimes. The Inner Mystique. And this album originally came out in 1968 on Tower Records. Didn't come out in the UK as a UK pressing until 2010, amazingly. This was the second album that they made, and it's famous for being an album where the actual band didn't actually play that much on the album. In fact, they didn't play on any of side one, and that's kind of a psych experience, if you like, of the first side. Has got some vocals on it, but they were covered by a studio guy, as were some of the songs on the second side. They lifted off the original vocals on the second side as well, so you can only imagine how the band felt about that, but needless to say, you wouldn't have been very happy, would you, if you were in the Chocolate Watch Band, and that's how it turned out. And the guy responsible for a lot of that was Ed Cobb, who produced the album. Now, Ed Cobb wrote Tainted Love, the Gloria Jones and Soft Cell hit, and he was also a producer of some note as well. He'd worked with Pink Floyd and Steely Dan, Fleetwood Mac, amongst others. But yeah, that's The Inner Mystique by the Chocolate Watch Band. It is a great album, despite all those strange goings-on within it, and I know a lot of people know the album. Last up, a group with a very tragic tale, really. Noah, they're a Canadian group. This was an album that was self-titled from 1970 on RCA Victor, put out on US release only. Formed by Buzz van der Zijl, who was very young when he formed the band. Tight Harmonies, a really good pop album. They had quite a lot of lineup changes, mainly lead singer changes that they had along the way, along the first and second albums. And then they were joined by Randy Bachman from the Guess Who to make I think he helped out on the second album, and he was also helping out on the third album. And they're a kind of pop-tinged group. And sort of tragedy struck the band in, I don't know when it was, early 70s, about 1972, when they were making the third album. Buzz van der Zijl became ill and was taken to hospital, found out he had a brain tumour and it was cancer, and had chemotherapy for a couple of years, and he continued to make music as much as he can while he was still quite ill, and sadly passed away in 1973, aged 23. Ridiculously young, obviously, to die, and a great talent, and left us behind a couple of albums, including this debut, Noah. So, a bit of a sad note to end on. I really appreciate you watching and subscribing. Looking forward to see you on the next video. I'll try and leave as many comments as I can on your videos because I love watching them. I'll see you soon. Take care.